this is going to be a somewhat different discourse from my usual Friday lectures, because it is primarily dedicated to and hopefully also concerning the work of a man who was one of the major influences in my life of esoteric study, the late Dr. Alvin Boyd Kuhn, who, among many other works, wrote what I think is a splendid little masterwork entitled Hallowe'en, a Festival of Lost Meanings. And I shall really largely devote myself this evening to recounting the thesis and also reading a number of quotations from it, which I usually don't do, because I think it is such an extremely valuable contribution to the understanding not really only of this one ancient holiday, but really of the nature of symbolism and its insight-producing and transformative effect. So you may wish to look at the little, is this blue or green? It's sort of turquoise. The little turquoise book, and as you know, and as you have experienced with me, and unfortunately I'm afraid you will experience probably again, it is the almost inevitable custom of aged persons to reminisce. I certainly qualify as an aged person, and I'm going to add a little bit of the reminiscing right now. When I was a young lad, and relatively recently inducted into the Theosophical Society, which just about at that time purchased this building. My Sundays usually were spent in the following manner. Sunday morning I went to church. Sunday afternoon I came to the public meeting of Besant Lodge here, or maybe we weren't even in this building yet. Sunday evening I went to another Theosophical Lodge, which unfortunately is no longer with us, the Los Angeles Lodge, which was located on 6th Street, rather near Western. So on that particular Sunday, when it came to my third spiritual engagement of the day, how I survived that much spirituality, I don't know, but I'm still here. So I came to the Los Angeles Lodge, and there I saw the speaker, a slender gentleman, already I think in his late 70s at the time, in a dark suit and with beautiful white hair, and that was Dr. Alvin Boyd Kuhn, and whom I knew something about because I have read some of his books. But what do you suppose he was lecturing about? He was lecturing about Halloween. And on the blackboard or green board or whatever board it was, he drew a circle of the zodiacal calendar, and he indicated the position of the festival of Halloween and its relationship to other ancient and not so ancient festivals. And I was totally captivated. So I went up to him afterwards and thanked him so much for his wonderful presentation, and that was the beginning of really very enjoyable and informative friendship that lasted, I think about another dozen years or so. In any event, I became sort of his local representative, so whenever he came to Los Angeles to lecture, he would send boxes of his books to me, and I would then display the books at his lectures and all sorts of things of that sort. And I had a letter from him from Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is where he resided for a long, long time. Not much more than, I think, a week prior to his passing in his 80s. And the circumstances that preceded that, he was attacked on the street by a hoodlum and knocked down and things of that sort, and I think that contributed to his demise. But let us say he and his contribution and his great and wonderful books, I would say this book would give you a sample of how insightful and at the same time how accomplished in the literary sense this gentleman was. But his chef-d'oeuvre, as we call it in French, his chief work is one called The Lost Light. And I think it's available. You can get information about it on the internet, like you can get information about everything, and also a good deal of misinformation about everything, but that one might be useful. In any event, of course, I should have preceded that account by saying that when I came to the United States, first year, second year in the fall, I was confronted with the activities involved in this strange holiday that I never heard about before. I had absolutely no idea what on earth this is, and people with pumpkins and masks and all kinds of things, and let's say I didn't really get a favorable impression of Halloween until Dr. Kuhn, and then I really changed my mind. Now, that being the case, we need perhaps to take a look at some general principles that are involved in trying to understand and trying to interpret some of this material. First of all, and that is probably not a great surprise to you, we live in an age and in a culture that is wrong-headed to a major extent. So if that has not occurred to you before, now start looking around and you'll see it working everywhere. And one of the features of this wrong-headedness is that we value what we think, and which at times we may even think right in that respect. What we think are facts. We think that we believe that the important element in life is factual, and at the same time we lose sight of, and really have very largely lost sight of, the symbolic dimension of life. As I think the late Lama Anagarika Govinda, one of the wise men of the last, 50 years or so, has written at one time that facts are really not very important. And he advanced a very insightful reason for that statement, because he said a fact is finished. It isn't going anywhere. And therefore, to concern ourselves with it to an excessive degree is a vast mistake. On the other hand, as I'm sure the Lama also indicated, and so did many others, when we are dealing with symbols, that is an entirely different issue, because symbols are like keys, opening up doors that otherwise would not be available to us. Symbols are, as C.G. Jung called them, symbols are the cipher and the ciphers to the mystery. And when that cipher is understood, when that cipher enters our consciousness, the mystery opens up to us. This is certainly not true of facts. And of course, one of the great dangers with facts is also that they are very easily distorted and made into things that they were never intended to be, and that they may act as agencies of our deception and our misleading. Now then, certainly ancient humanity, and by which of course we mean people in various geographical locations, whether it's ancient India or ancient Japan, or whether it is, let's say, the ancient Mediterranean matrix, which is really the mother and father of our culture, consisting of ancient Greece, Egypt, Persia, Rome. These ancient cultures have valued symbols very greatly. And in fact, they derived much of the meaning of their lives out of their understanding of such symbols. And that is what we are dealing with here. And when you feel like it later on, or whenever, you can pick up one of those little handouts that we have over there on the piano, which in rough outline will show you what I'm describing now. The calendar of the year, the zodiacal calendar of the year, it can be most easily graphically represented as a circle. And on the top of the circle is a point which stands for the summer solstice. At the bottom of the circle, connected with an axis, is the winter solstice. The two points that would be connected by a horizontal axe are the equinoxes. The autumnal equinox over on one side and the vernal or spring equinox on the other. Now, as we will see in some of the quotations possibly that I may offer to you, the ancient peoples, certainly of the Mediterranean area, but also of other locales, have looked upon this circular path, this mandala, as it might be called by way of its Eastern Hindu and Buddhist name. They looked upon this mandala as a pattern of the developmental fate of the human being. And the way they envision that, and the way we have to envision it, that at the top of the circle, which is the closest to the sun having been always regarded as the great symbol of light and life because of its life-giving heat and so forth, therefore the summer solstice stands as the symbol of the coming of the light that dwells within us, the light of the human spirit and of other spirits into the world. From the light, the radiance of the sun, the rays and the particles of light come down into manifestation, and then they begin their journey here. The journey moves from the summer solstice to the autumnal equinox. The autumnal equinox, the beginning of the, symbolically speaking, the beginning of the obscuration of the light. When in the autumn the nights grow longer, the days grow shorter, and the bright and life-giving and consciousness-enhancing luminosity of the summer solstice wanes. Then it continues its journeys, and it goes even into greater darkness. So what happens is that a deific spirit, which is embodied within us, has descended from the light and now descends further and further into the darkness. And so after its obscuration in the autumn, it reaches the greatest point of darkness at midwinter. But as let's say another great symbolic festival, the Christmas festival, tells us, at the darkest point of the year, something happens. There is a movement now back toward the light again. There is the coming of the little light, the Christ child, and then there is an ascent on the other arc of the circle, and from there now we can speak, if we want to use that term. I don't like it very much in a spiritual context. I must say that one of my most admired figures of the past, Madame Blavatsky, unfortunately introduced this, of calling it evolution, which the preachers on television and on radio tend to pronounce evolution. Yeah. But in any event, so now an ascent begins. The journey of return begins. And when we get halfway up that path, then we have the vernal equinox, spring. Very all celebrated always also with a great deal of joy and a great deal of relief after the passing of winter, and spiritually indicating that now we are really returning to where we came from. You can call that mystery by all kinds of names, and it has been called by all kinds of names. The old Greeks would have called it the kingdom of the gods and the goddesses, who happily enjoy themselves up on the top of Mount Olympus, and who, among other things which I always enjoyed about the Greek gods and goddesses, that they have an overwhelmingly wonderful and inspiring laughter. So that when the Greeks were walking around on the bottom of the mountain, and up in the clouds are the gods, they would hear them laughing. And this in turn made them feel better, because the gods were conceived as happy. And their happiness is one that, let's say, exists as a promise for the humans. Because the Greeks had a whole graded little system whereby humans could reach the kingdom of the gods and ultimately become gods and goddesses themselves. Of course, they wouldn't have been able to become that if the potential hadn't been in them from the beginning. And so the Greeks said, first, if you strive for virtue, which means really spiritual strength, in Latin virtus, it's connected to vir, the hero. And when you thus exercise your spiritual strength, you become a hero. That is the first step. And from that you move further up. From the hero, the next step is a demigod or a demigoddess. It's sort of not quite human anymore and not quite divine yet, but still, as you know, a great accomplishment. After which there is a development into full gods and goddesses. And you say, well, that was kind of a very promising picture. And what happened to it? Well, actually, the Greeks called this apotheosis, the becoming divine. And when the Christians came along, the smarter Christians said that, there is, even within the new religious system, there is something like that. And to this very day, in the Eastern Orthodox Church, Greek Orthodox, Russian, Syrian, Melkite, so forth, the entry into the heavenly realm, when the human spirit joins Almighty God, is called the theosis. The apo has been dropped, but it's the deification of the human. The human becomes divine by entering the divine. And so we can see how these stages are let's say, depicted on the circle of the zodiac. Now, it is the contention of some of the scholars of mythology, including the late Dr. Alvin Boyd Kuhn, who was incidentally, just to indicate his accomplishments, he was originally a school teacher. I think he was a high school teacher. And then he started studying esoterica, and he said, I really need to study something higher than this stuff. And so he began studying the symbolism of the great world religions. He taught himself, with a little bit of assistance, how to read the hieroglyphics of Egypt. And then he got his PhD from Columbia University in 1931, which I'm happy to say is the year of my birth, by writing a books of a religious movement that started in America, because that's what the university was writing about, religious movements that started here, called Theosophy. And that was his doctor's thesis at Columbia University, and it's still one of the better books on that subject that you can get hold of. Anyway, he was a highly accomplished man in many respects. And so when he writes about this, he indicates, for instance, that the sort of the full impact, the didactic message of the four seasons in terms of their spiritual, their esoteric significance, is particularly manifest when we look at the 40-day period after the solstices and the equinoxes. And after 40 days after the autumnal equinox is a day that we call Hallowe'en, which received that name in the at the time that Christianity had already made big inroads into Europe, the eve of All Hallows. Hallow being an ancient Anglo-Saxon word for saint, the eve of all saints, because in the Christian calendar, which has a lot in common with the ancient cosmic calendar, to be sure, in the Christian calendar, the feast of all saints is the 1st of November, and the 2nd of November is the feast of all souls, which again sort of indicates in a what the French would call manqué, in a somewhat disguised fashion, the recognition underneath the surface on the part of Christianity of the close relationship of the theosis, of the deification, and of the deific potential in the human. Because as Dr. Kuhn wrote it, and if I ever give him an opportunity now to speak to you, which will require the muting of myself in some ways, at least in terms of thought, the very proximity of Halloween to All Saints' Day indicates that the descent into materiality, the descent into nature of the divine spark, and its re-emergence as a spiritual hero are very close together. And that once we are here and have fully entered earthly life, then we should be ready to take the next step into the spiritual world, which in Christendom is called the world of the saints, and perhaps also the world of the angels, but which, let's say, in the antique form, has to do with All Hallows. And so we have here then a magnificent pattern of development which really should make us aware of the fact as to how much wiser the ancients were than we are at the present time, because they had this high regard for symbols, and they saw the passing of time throughout the year. They saw in the great cosmic mandala of the seasons, they saw something that is relevant to us, that can inspire us, and that can help to make us the kind of spiritual heroes that in Christendom is symbolized by the saints, and in antiquity, let's say, was symbolized by the gods and the goddesses. And this is a very important thing. You might think that, oh well, with the coming of the age of reason, which, when it comes right down to it, if you really study history, the age of reason, the age of so-called enlightenment has brought a lot of darkness into the world. And the age of reason had originated and still continues to spawn a tremendous amount of unreason. And the main problem, I almost said the main reason, the main problem that causes that to happen is that we have disregarded the larger, the mysterious and mystical context of which reason is just, let's say, one particular segment. And it's also present in Dr. Kuhn's little book, although not with a great deal of prominence, that this fourfold structure, which then divides into the eight, with the the quarterly festivals such as Halloween, this fourfold structure of the cosmos also reminds us of certain depth psychological principles which have been brought to our attention more recently in history, such as by Dr. C.G. Jung, of sensation, feeling, thinking, and intuition. And so our consciousness, which consists to a large extent of these four, they are the foundation of consciousness, and then the transcendent functions, so to say, as added to it. These are our spiritual vehicle. These are these together represent a mechanism whereby we move to our origins and to transcendence itself. Now you may say, oh well, you know, the age of reason has done away with that. Who is one of the most, I don't know, the most prominent people who is always regarded in the books as the great representatives of reason? I'm not going to mention the Frenchman right now, but you know, I am closer to the Germanic world of thought. Immanuel Kant. You know, Immanuel Kant says, you know, the pure reason, as he spoke, die reine Vernunft. Well, you know, the pure reason is different from the ordinary reason that we have around here. I don't encounter too many people whose reason is pure, including the one who looks back at me from the mirror. But Immanuel Kant is saying, well, and I try to overcome my geriatric forgetfulness. This is the statement of Kant that I always valued most highly. Der gestirnte Himmel über mir und das moralische Gesetz in mir wird mir Richtung geben. The vault of the starry heavens above and the moral law within me, these are the ones that shall give me direction. You know, an astrologer could say that. Das gestirnte Himmel über mir. So there is the recognition, once again, of the immense symbolic significance of the cosmos. Now, the cosmos is not the ultimate reality. The cosmos is an emanation and a representation of the ultimate reality. I always shudder when sort of my New Age friends go to work and cosmic this and cosmic that. You know, okay, you know, that's still only halfway there, you know, the cosmic. But on the other hand, the cosmos can act as a symbol, and the various portions within it, even the movement of the calendar, are very important and a very immense symbol. And then indeed the starry heavens above will give us direction. And the favorite time of the day is after the sun goes down. Of course, it may have something to do with my Transylvanian heritage on my mother's side, you know, but in any event, it is, you know, that's another set of symbols that have their own merit. But the issue being that when the moon and the stars come up in the sky, just contemplating them, and I'm not on astronomy, physical astronomy never turned me on very much, but let's say just allowing the the implicit transcendental symbolism of the luminaries of the heavens to come to you is a wonderful experience. It is instructive, it is inspiring, and it is motivating to greater and more transcendental vision. I'm also very fond of one of the symbolic images of the ancient Mediterranean world. It was used by the Gnostics, but by many others, who said that the vault of the heavens is like a perforated bowl. So, to be a little bit, not a non-archetypal amount, it's something like a sieve or a colander. Those would be the culinary metaphors, and maybe they shouldn't be used, But, and that the ancients said, see, there are little holes in this covering. And through these holes, the immense light of transcendence, the immense light of heaven, the fiery essence of divinity shines through. Now, isn't that just a wonderful metaphor? It certainly is. To me, it's a heck of a lot more exciting than, let's use a current buzzword, the science, as if there were only one science. There are many sciences, In any event, so this is a very important matrix of symbolism. Now, this being the case, I promised you some of the I think, splendid and wonderfully expressed material in this little book, and I will refer to some of these now. Very, very important, and I would say truly a crucial element in the book, which of course we discover in C.G. Jung and a number of other insightful writers and teachers, is that what we truly seek in life is not anything else but meaning. Meaning is the sign of the divine. If I may say so symbolically, meaning are the wings on the helm and on the shoes of Mercury. Meaning is the power that gives the mercurial element within us the power to fly aloft and to discover that which ordinarily cannot be discovered. Once again, you see how different this view of life is from the kind of rigid and frequently either disguised or undisguised materialism of the rationalists, whatever they may masquerade as, whether they masquerade as scientists or whether they masquerade as politicians or whatever, because with the power of the lesser, the extroverted mind, we can go only so far. But when we touch on other, you might as well call it an other mind. The term consciousness is probably more accurate and more descriptive. When you are beginning to touch these regions, then what discloses itself to you are not data, which is another word for facts. Of course, a lot of so-called data that we recognize as data, when we look at them long enough, we find that they are not factual at all. But that's just a little nasty remark which I love to engage in. But let's say now we move into the realm of meaning. Now what is meaning? Usually when you hear that word, then you think of, oh, well, that means that this means that. It's not that at all. It's just like a symbol is not a sign, and a sign is not a symbol. So meaning is something that transcends the kind of meaning that this equals that. The real meaning, as certainly has been rediscovered and greatly extolled by C.G. Jung and some other Scientologists, heavens no, other psychologists, I'm going to have to do penance, I'm going to have to do 10 penance, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, oh my great sin. Oh well, you know, these things are floating around in the air and we pick them up. Oh, there must be a little bit of meaning there too. Just a itty-bitty meaning, you know. But let's say meaning is creative. Out of meaning, something emerges. Out of the fact, as I said before, nothing emerges because the fact is finished. Out of the data, nothing emerges because they are finished. They are of the past. They are something that one should greet with "Get thee behind me," you know. But meaning, however, reproduces itself. Meaning brings forth new insights. Meaning brings forth, reverberates through the other functions of consciousness, and when we experience real meaning, it has a powerful effect on everything, on our emotions. I would venture to suggest that much of true happiness comes from meaning. When we discover a meaning, we get happy. When we don't perceive meaning in what is going on, we are unhappy. At least I am. That's why it's so difficult to be happy in this world, because so few things that come our way are really meaningful. We live in a world of non-meaning, and that's a very bad world to live in, I assure you. So a little bit about the statement concerning meaning. This is right at the very beginning, the introduction of the lovely little book, Hallowe'en, A Festival of Lost Meanings. Dr. Kuhn wrote, "It is not unwarrantable to predict that the time is not far distant when a world of more enlightened intelligence may be able to look back upon the present age." Well, I think we are still in that age, although he wrote this quite a while ago, "particularly in the Western area of civilization, and label it as the epoch in which the people celebrated a series of festivals around the cycle of the year in nearly total ignorance of their true significance." And he includes religious festivals, which are, of course, fall into this also. So then a little more about this element of meaning. Symbols, on the other hand, rather than data, rather than facts, they are the carriers of meaning. You might say that when meaning comes to you, it rides on a symbol. which is of course a metaphor, but not a bad one. The archetypal psyche, as Jung would call it, speaks through symbols. Most ancient and the most ancient and important symbol is the one that we have just spoken about, which is the symbol of the cosmos, because we live within it, and if we have a symbolic sense, then from the cosmos itself and its various portions and its various changes, we can derive a good deal of meaning. So it can be a carrier of meaning to us. Now, what we are dealing with, so the author here tells us, and that's by no means something to be disdained, that in Halloween we have a commemoration, a celebration, a visualization of the descent of consciousness into the realm of ego, and let's say connected with that into the realm of materiality. And that I think is quite important. Here we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but we know of course that one of the popular symbols of one of the popular symbols of Halloween is the mask. Now, it's not the mask that you get a command to wear from on high from Washington, D.C. or something like that. But there's nice, cute masks, funny ones. And they are perhaps even intended to terrify a little bit. In any event, the ancients were very aware of the circumstance that in order to get along in this world and accomplish various worldly objectives, we have to wear a mask. I am convinced that without exception everyone in this room would qualify. If you are unmasked, your ultimate, your true, your light embodied figure would appear in this room, we would all fall on our faces before you. Because the real appearance of the human, the real nature of the human is something so sublime, so incredible, so powerful, so meaningful, and on an emotional level also so valuable. People like their pets, and I don't blame them. I grew up usually with at least one myself, but let's say no matter how much unconditional doggy love you get from your pet, real love comes from the human. Why? Because there's something inside of us, something incredible, something wonderful, something out of this world, that among its many other qualities, along its many virtues, is capable of love. And that is perhaps why in the in the Gnostic scriptures, and maybe in a somewhat more disguised form in the canonical scriptures too, the statement is made that the Logos, Jesus Christ, brought only one law into the world. He did away with all the laws of old Jehovah, and there were many of them, and pretty nasty ones at that. It's the law of love. And so that is, because that is a divine quality, and it is part of the recognition that we need to look beyond what the ancients had a good word for it, the persona. Persona, from which we get the word personality now, and sometimes it's even used in a more specific psychological sense. Per, through, sona, sound. That's through which the sound comes. And it is the mask of the dramatis personae in the ancient drama, which usually, and you know the symbol still exists, appear in the two masks of comedy and tragedy. One has the comedy has his mouth turned upwards, the tragedy has its mouth turned downwards. And this is the mask, the persona, also personality, behind which the real self hides, shall we say. So there is a great mystery here, let us say, about the disguise and the revelation behind the mask, and that is why it enters Halloween. So our little book says Halloween was dated to come on the night before November 1st. I already mentioned that, because it was intended to represent the natural man development antecedent and preparatory to the burgeoning out of the spiritual flower on the following day, because that is the church triumphant of the saints, the following day. And all this was in strict accord with the sagacious design of the ancient theurgists, the initiates in the wisdom lore of primeval revelation, whereby the stratagem of dramatic genius fixed on the eve before the chief festival a night of preparation for the main action of the morrow. It went by the name, by the Greek name of Paraskeve, meaning the eve of preparation, or preportia, the advance of the going out. So this sheds, let's say, an additional light. Now, an interesting issue that runs really through the entire book is that this is also connected very much with, in ancient drama, you know, the initial dramas of Greece were referred to as goat songs. Isn't that weird? That really gets you goat. Huh? I shouldn't have yielded to that temptation, shall we say. But the reason for it was that the initial dramatic performances consisted of the symbolism that the human appears in an animal form. And it sounds rather weird, but thereby I think a significant meaning has been conveyed. And Alvin Kuhn quotes various scriptures from different religions, mainly from classical activity, indicating that the human has come and has entered the shape of an animal. What is that animal? Our bodies. This, let's say, this message that we wear a persona, we wear a mask from nature and from the animal kingdom, indicates to us a couple of things. One, that we should appreciate the animal. Even in the New Testament, even Jesus Christ rides on Palm Sunday, the one day of earthly triumph, into the city on the back of a donkey, on the animal. You know? So the animal is always there. But it is important to remember that the animal can be our helper, and should be, but it can also be our prison warden. If we become imprisoned by the body, and it's not just the body that we wear right now, but the whole bodily reality, the material reality. If we become so involved in these physical bodies and physical actions and physical concerns of one kind or the other, including our concern for health. Need I say more? No, I don't need to say more. But let's say, whenever you become so fascinated by something physical that it virtually or actually blots out your concern with other and higher things, then you're making a mistake. You might as well identify yourself with your car. It carries you around, but without you being there as the driver, it's not going to go very far. To understand the proper attitude, the proper balance that we must strike between our physical embodiment, including we are wearing animal bodies, biological substance, and that deeper and ultimately not only deep but profound something, that mysterious something that dwells within us, and that is very different from that animal vehicle, although it is capable of employing it for its own purposes. So what is really important is to work our way through to the directive intelligence, which is supposed to handle and lead and command the body and physical life itself. And I would suggest, on the basis of what we said before, that probably the most important element, the most important factor that allows us to do this is the discovery of meaning. It's very difficult to talk about this at greater length than I already have. But let's say, if you think back into various circumstances of your own lives, and let's say you were having an experience, or you had managed to contrive to have an important experience, and all of a sudden it dawns on you, yes, this really means something. It's really it's next to the mystical experience. The revelation of meaning is of extreme power and of very great importance. And to forego that or to neglect that, I think is a very unfortunate thing. And yet, this is the sort of thing that we as humans are likely to do. So something is playing music. In any event, that's okay as long as it's the right people who are playing it. In any event, so this is really the challenge. And let's say the festival of Halloween, with its manifold symbolism of, let's say, the lower and the natural world, even in its preternatural aspects, because the ancients did not regard the spirit world, the world of the dead, as something particularly exciting. They were not spiritualists. They weren't sitting with the Ouija board, and they were not going to the trance medium. But what they recognized was that the lower realm of reality which we have entered into, and of which certainly our body is a part, is one wherein we need to function, and which really ultimately we need to overcome. Now, this overcoming has sometimes motivated people to activities which maybe weren't all that helpful, like excessive asceticism, trying to get away from the body, trying to get away from the desires of the body, fasting till you become like a Suppenkasper in German, it's a cartoon character, and so forth. And of course, already with the early hermits, Saint Anthony the Hermit, who went out into the desert because there were too many women tempting him in the city, and he went out there into the Egyptian desert, and what happened? The tempting women in spirit form came to him and drove him just about crazy, So the thing is, the lesser nature, just to begin with, whatever it happens to be, whether it's insects or plants or animals or whatever, nature is persistent. The Romans had a saying, naturam expellas furca, tamen usque recurret. You can chase nature out with a pitchfork, but she'll be coming back. So we have to come to a working arrangement with the natural world, including those elements like our bodies that are within which we live. But it is somewhat the principle of rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but rendering to the Divine Spirit what appertains to it. So obviously Caesar, our body, needs to eat. He needs to drink. And if we don't supply Caesar with these necessities, then the empire will end. And even even the famous saying, the empire never ended, will be put to shame in that respect. So we need to take care in a basic fashion, but at the same time we have to be careful that we don't overdo it. Why is that? Because consciousness has a tendency to project itself onto various objects. And when the material world, when the natural world, when our own bodies become more important to us than they ought to be, then we have engaged in something that, say, in the early Christian era raised a lot of hackles. We have built a false deity. We have built a graven image, and we are worshipping the graven image instead of the spirit within us. So this is a very great challenge. And so in the little book upon which I'm basing my discourse here, it runs all through the book that we need to recognize that a festival like Halloween was designed as the dramatization of our presence in the natural world. And part of, to the ancients, one sometimes wishes that obtained with us, to the ancients the natural world also included the spirit world. The natural world includes the dead. I was born in a country and have the biological heritage within me of my people who were, at least at that time, and that's before the great destroyer, the great evil of the age, Marxist communism, came to take it away from the people. The people were very reverent toward the dead. And so the 2nd of November, which is Totentag, the Day of the Dead, it's also very, it's present in all Catholic countries, was the time when you addressed yourself to those who are no longer here in the flesh, and sort of mentally re-establish, according to your ability, a contact with those who are no longer here in the flesh. Let's say also the awareness that we are surrounded by beings that don't have a physical body, although we have a physical body, and that if we want to be, let's say, living within the natural world, we also have to live in the preternatural or in the supernatural world, because as the very word itself declares, that also is natural. Spirits, whether they are nature spirits, whether the spirits of the dead, or any number of others, because certainly the traditions assure us, and some of our experiences reassure us, that the spirit world is extremely numerous. I remember, once again the remembrances of an old person that quite early in my residence in Austria, I went to a lecture in a college town in Gmunden in the Salzkammergut. And there was a university professor from Graz. I can't come up with his name at this point, but eventually will, who had just written a book called Wir und die Toten, We and the Dead. And he was a maybe not personal, but he was a disciple of Rudolf Steiner, so very much involved with the spiritual worlds. The professor got up in this movie theater that was, of mixed audience, wasn't a university crowd necessarily, and he said, "Do you people know that even though we have quite a large crowd here, that there are more dead people in this room right now than you?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, what's this guy talking about?" Yeah. But as the years went by and I came to occupy myself with these things, not only Uncle Rudolf Steiner, but all the rest of them, I became convinced, in part as the result of my own experiences, that indeed the reality is much, much greater than the physical reality. And we should recognize that. We should not morbidly seek it, because that is the ancient sin of necromancy, when you, without good reason and perhaps unwillingly, call forth the spirits, in that case the spirits of the dead. But to recognize the various non-physical forms of life as being existent and being around us, and sometimes in various ways being able to relate to us, I think is an important issue. But here also we have to defeat a great curse of our age, which has been growing upon us and has become a titanic monkey, I don't know, a super gorilla that we carry on our backs, which is materialism. If we only recognize material reality, then we are ignoring and excluding from the availability of our consciousness a whole world of beings which don't have physical bodies as we have, and which their very existence and then various interactions with them can redound to our benefit. But of course, again, we have to have good judgment, because there are helpful and wise and kindly beings that are ordinarily invisible to us, and there are others that are not of that sort. And we have to develop the discernment, the discrimination, to tell one from the other. I may share one or two little quotations with you. I think we can still do that. Let me see. Okay, here we are. Yeah, I think this is a good one. Here, actually, Kuhn quotes various sources of people who studied antiquity, and then he recounts a statement in one of his own books, with namely the one Who is this King of Glory, very fine book. Here is a statement of Kuhn. The incarnation of the divine soul in man's animal body is the basis of all the legends of the sorcerers turning the hero or his men into animals, or their disguising themselves as animals. So this whole human-animal interaction. The animal mask of Halloween is the survival and replica of the same thing, for the masks were originally the hides of animals. The prominence given this phase of the drama's meaning is attested by, he's quoting a scholar named Lord Raglan. He says that a prominent feature of every type of traditional narrative is the man in animal form, or the animal that can speak. This must be so because there is but one central theme of the drama of human life, namely, the interrelated history of the two components of man's life, the soul and body, God and animal. So this is also an important matter to remember. And the animal is often represented by way of, as I said, by way of animal mask. I remember a lot of the nice masks that we had at our Halloween parties here were always sort of werewolf and a vampire who is kind of an animalistic creature anyway, who lives on blood, and all of that, so that it is a disguise, which I am very greatly tempted, and I will yield to the temptation, but only to a minimal degree, to bring us up to date about the masquerade that is going on in our society at the present time. You see, here is the issue. And it has many aspects, and this is only a small example. There is a world of difference between doing something just because you've been told to do it, like a little child who doesn't know any better, or on the other hand, to try to think about what is happening, try to think about what you are doing, and try to derive some meaning from this cogitation, a world of difference. And therefore, I think there is no doubt about it that in the last almost maybe 2 years from now, let's say our society has paid very little attention to the kind of meaning that we require in connection with our actions. And let us say, in overall terms, and I'll just throw that out, I'm not going to go into any detail, we have concentrated, not some of us individually, but let's say our society has concentrated on an issue, the so-called pandemic, and I protest against, I don't like the word pandemic, because I don't like to say anything bad about the great God, Pan. Yo Pan, he's a friend of mine, the goat foot God, as Dion Fortune called him. But let us say the pure organizing of people's lives in society on the basis of what at best is a physical issue, a sickness. Now, this can be done two ways. You can say, well, okay, they say that I should don't go out and don't go to the restaurant, whatever the case may be. Don't go to the pub, which is even more painful. I would say, well, you got to remember that alcohol has been anciently called a spirit. So if you want to be spiritual, don't neglect the spirits, and we will try to address ourselves to some spirits shortly. Let's say, but you have to realize that you are not. No doubt, your body can get sick and die, and will do it for some cause or the other, sooner or later. You can't get away from it. But the important thing is that at the same time you have to consider the issue of meaning and the issue of what certain forms of behavior that are, a new word is mandated, that you are mandated to do, how these will affect something else. They might help your body or they might help not, depending on a lot of factors. But I tell you what, if they harm at the same time your psyche, then there's something to look at. And what has happened here for the last almost 2 years has been extremely deleterious. In fact, these regulations and this whole business has been devised and designed as if the human being had no psyche that can be hurt. And I think that somebody who at one time was considered quite important had said, what good is it if a man wins the whole world but loses his soul? Yeah, but that's religion, and religion is balderdash. But the thing is that you have, or maybe even more importantly, you are a psyche. And it is this psyche that wears the Halloween mask. It is this psyche that dresses up as whatever it dresses up as. A goat or Dracula or a skeleton or one thing or the other. But this is a very important thing. Why? Because your psyche is you. Or maybe, if you want to be very technical about it in an esoteric sense, the psyche, the soul, is the closest fitting vesture of the spirit, of yet a deeper one. But it's very, very important. And if this psyche is sensitive, it's more sensitive than your body. And when you're locked up, and when various other hardships are imposed on the psyche becomes sick. And so we have a tremendous amount of depression, we have a tremendous amount of the increase of the number of suicides, we have a great psychological damage that is being done to our people. Now, maybe it's worth it. I don't know. I consider myself fairly smart, but I'm not that smart to be able to render a complete judgment on that. But let us say I know that tremendous harm has been done, and that tremendous harm is being done, and it apparently is being done thoughtlessly. Now look, anything that you do in this world, whatever it is, whether you drink a little water, which is what I'm going to do, or anything that you do, and even anything that you think, is worth subjecting to a deeper inquiry in terms of meaning. If you just go ahead and do things because you have been told, or maybe even if something within you tells, without sorting out the issue, without what a good old Victorian word, ratiocination, then you know what you're doing? You're not living up to your status as a human. Because the human is the thinker. The very word man, according to some, but then there's an opposition to every view, but according to some, the very word man is derived from the Sanskrit manas, which is the thinker, the thinking principle, the thinking function. So you're human, you're supposed to think. That's what you are supposed to do. Not just follow directions. Whether these directions come from the Vatican, or whether they come from, I don't know, the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, or whether they come from who knows who, and who cares who, in Washington, D.C. You are supposed to subject it to a multi-leveled process of consciousness within which the element of meaning should play a very great role. I am tempted to say something, and I'll say it, because there are certain kinds of temptation one should yield to, and that is one of them. That I would rather die with meaning in my mind than keep on leading a meaningless life. Okay? Does that make me bad? Does that make me racially insensitive, or I don't know what? I don't care what it makes me, that is the way I feel, and I feel that way, I think, for a valid reason. Because we haven't come to this world just to keep on putting one foot in front of the other and let 1 year push out the next one, and another New Year's, and all of that, and all of that. But we have come here in search of what I have been talking about all along, of a holy grail that is meaning. We want to and we should exit this life having discovered more meaning, real meaning, the transformative meaning, the insight-producing meaning, the wholeness-producing meaning than we had earlier on in life. If we manage to do that, we have done very, very well. Now, at the same time, we might be dying of cancer, we might be dying of the Wuhan virus, as I like to call it lately, and so forth. That's something else. But keep this issue in mind. Now, humanity has kept this in mind. By the way, I was reminded in Dr. Kuhn's statements about putting on animal skins or so of the famous cave paintings in the south of France, in the mountains of Ariège, and there where the shaman is dancing around with a tiger or a leopard or something like that, skin on him, and so forth. Very, very famous, probably the earliest artwork that we know about in the world. That yes, the relationship to the animal and how we have become flesh, how the word in us has become flesh, is very, very interesting and very, very important. But we are not here just to serve that flesh. We have to serve it to the point of giving it food and drink and various other things. But there is something else. There is a soul. And in the soul, or connected with the soul, there is a spirit. And this has been known from east to west, from the from the northernmost islands of Japan from Hokkaido right on over to the Mediterranean, and everywhere people knew that this exists and this is important. Why are we becoming the first people, the first culture in the history of this sorrowful planet, as Madame Blavatsky called it, who ignores that, who regards as real only the physical body and the physical disease and physical things that can be done about it? Why? I would say that some kind of common sense would say that we do so because we are stupid. Because we are not exercising our God-given mind, whether it's the pure reason of Immanuel Kant or anything else, and we prefer to be driven along sort of by the river of life and not exercise our most important and ultimately really most valuable faculties. And that is why we have to concentrate on the issue of consciousness. And certainly even a folk festival and so forth, like Halloween, even reminds us of it, and it's certainly all the layers of symbolism are magnificently explained by this particular author. But we have to keep in mind that what we are here for is meaning. And so when we are being badgered and propagandized and things of that sort in various ways, and the means to that end are immense number now. Well, you know, Dr. Goebbels of miserable memory, shall we say, he had only radio. That's all he had. You know what? He accomplished quite a bit with it, and so did his boss with that funny little thing, one little mustache under his nose. But let's say, so the instruments of persuasion, of propagandizing, of badgering, of persuading, have multiplied to an incredible extent. And their power, consequently, has also. Now, look, when we are being invaded by influences over which we have very little control, if any, then that should give us food for thought. We should look at what is happening and see, is this ultimately redounding to my benefit and to the benefit of my fellow humans? Or is this business going to, or maybe it is even truthful, but it is unbalanced. And anything that does not pay attention to that psyche in me and that spirit within my psyche is unbalanced. And therefore, we have to consider these things, and we have to consider them in depth. And if we use our powers of our ego, our sensate function, our feeling function, our thinking function, and ultimately our intuition and what is beyond, then really in the long run we can't go wrong. One of the strange things about life in this world is that we have really got everything that we need to become good, to become wise, to become conscious. It's here, but we are not using it. You see, that's why we needed people like Carl Jung and others. we have to keep in mind, what does my consciousness, if I have any, well, being conscious, what does my consciousness say about this, and it will say something. We have to learn how to call upon the deeper powers of cognition, of wholeness, of vision within us, and keep calling. And say, well, I don't get anything. All I get is the stuff that comes on television. All I get is the stuff on my computer. Keep on knocking on the door, will you? Keep on knocking on the door and it will come. But if you don't, then a situation is going to be very, very difficult. So I recommend that even this folk festival of Halloween, as explained more wonderfully in this little book, and of course also having been expounded by others, should remind us of what we are here for. What we are here for is to become conscious. What we are here for is to get closer and closer to the ultimate spiritual reality that we really are, and to the world of which, with or without epidemics and pandemics or whatever, we are marching right now. Because that is where we are going. So we might as well go there consciously, go there devotedly, go there insightfully, rather than being pushed along by external forces over which we have no control, and which by the very nature of the absence of consciousness from the process are bound to harm us rather than help us. So we have a lot of things to think about on Halloween, but if we just think and if we just intuit and if we go to the Spirit, then we will get the answers and then all will be well. And without that, hardly anything will be right, hardly anything will be well. And the world where we live and our own presence in it will continue to be meaningless, useless, and ultimately very, very painful. But these things can be prevented. And they can be prevented by cultivating our sense of symbol, our striving for meaning, and our determination to make life more insightful, more meaningful, and ultimately closer and closer to the spiritual source from whence we come and whither we shall return. And now we'll have our more Halloweeny and hopefully a little more animated social hour than at other times. And I thank you very much for being here, and take a look at, I think the programs in the future will interest you. And happy Halloween, and thank you so very much for coming.